Hello and welcome. This is the Finjan Show. I'm your host, Faris Alami. And this episode is brought to you by Connecting Dots Globally, a nonprofit that is focused on youth development in the STEAM entrepreneurship area. Welcome, everyone. So today's discussion is built on a question that I've been asked over the last decade. I've been fortunate to have done business in over 101 countries. And the questions I usually get, first, are they all different? Are they all the same? What is happening? What I'd like to do is really, first of all, address the idea that I'm working really in one field. Excuse me. I'm only working in one area, which is entrepreneurship and small business development. Now, within that area, I am engaged in multiple arenas, for example, policy making, program deployment, actual training or delivering of programs, feedback, research, right? All these different areas. But really within, again, those two big categories, I'm going to call them, entrepreneurship and small business development programs. And the reason I say that, because it could be different for the different industries that I might have faced or worked in. But I want to highlight what are some of the similarities and what are some of the differences in the countries that I've worked with. I'm going to talk about one of them, or one of the ideas today is really about the organization that supports them. And then maybe in another talk, we'll talk about the entrepreneurs that go through the programs themselves. So when I think about supporting organizations that support entrepreneurs or small business development in their community, remember, please, that we are focused on the underserved, underrepresented, under-resourced. And we're going to talk about what are some of the similarities and differences that I've seen. And I've worked in some rich countries with lots of resources, and with some very poor countries with no resources, and some that are under occupation or military control. And I mentioned that because while they're different, there's some similarities, and while they're different and there's some similarities, there's some things we could learn from both. And I'm hoping that you could do that in the process. So the first thing I will say, some of the comments. Some of the common words I always heard in whatever community I worked in is this idea that we are unique, this idea that it's different, this idea that it's a new, this idea that there's not much activities in this space. And I will say that these are some of the similarities that I've heard in all the communities. Very rarely, almost never, I've heard we're the same like everyone else, or that this community is very similar to ABC community. Now, that's the similarity. What are the differences? I would say really that a lot of times there are actually some similarities between that community and other communities. Now, we can't I always say, we can't copy paste. If you're looking for copy paste jobs, I'm the wrong guy. Because what I've learned through the process of copy-paste, that it might work for one group in one time, in one location, may never work for another group and another time for another location. We can learn from it, but we can just copy and paste it. So that's important to know, that that's the difference, right? That we need to make sure that we understand. We might know, but we still have to understand. But I'll also know some of the differences is some communities choose to go through, I call it the process of learning themselves, because that's the only thing they want to do, is they want to learn. They want to deploy a program so they could come back and say, we learned this. There are others who say, you know what, we already know some basic fundamentals about entrepreneurship and small businesses. And we also know some basic fundamentals about our communities. We're going to combine them to say, what can we learn from other communities that are similar that we could deploy here, without having the mentality of copy-paste programs or services or activities. So that's important to understand. These are some of the differences that I've seen with individuals and groups or organizations deploying such programs. So now that you know what are the similarities and the differences, I hope that when you go before you deploy a program in your community, that you look and see what are some of the common things that are happening in your community, and do you really have a good connections to the majority of the community, or are you connected to a smaller group of communities? And while others want to do surveys and research, and you think you should do, I want to caution you with understanding that whatever data points you collect, just remember that that's a data point at a given time, based on the connections that you may have, and not necessarily about the reality of the marketplace. Not saying it's wrong, I'm just saying just be aware of it. Because one of the areas I will never forget, we researched the community. They came back and they told us we're going to have individuals with a bachelor or master degree going through the program. We're going to have people who already have jobs. So this will be their second job. And then we're going to have people who are ready to deploy businesses. And once we started the program, people who came to the programs were individuals who did not have any higher educations. They're saying that they're not educated, but just didn't have higher formal education. Second, this was not their second job. This was their first job, and this was their income. And then third, they didn't even have some of the resources such as transportation to get to the training. So till you deploy a program, all that information is important to understand what should be deployed. But till you deploy it, it's really hard to tell. And once you deploy it, you have to have the flexibility to engage the different things. These are some of the similarities and differences that I've noticed in the communities I've worked with, where some of them take these things seriously and understand that we want to deploy the best right away. And they don't want to spend 3-4 years researching. They want to spend maybe 3-4 weeks, and then they got to deploy something, or even 3-4 days, and they're going to deploy something, because till you deploy it, it's hard to tell. What I also learned that every time you deploy it could be different, because as you continue to create some attentions within your community, the different types of people that apply may be different, and the different types of stages of business may be different. And you might have to dig deeper to get to the communities that you are targeting. So the better you are at articulating what the program is all about, what is it intend to do, and who should apply, the better you will get at getting those individuals to apply and be engaged with you. Till next time, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope these insights could help you next time you deploy a program from our learnings in over 101 countries that we've been blessed to touch. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host, Faris Alami. This is the Finjan Show.